we're going to go ahead and start our meeting of our Smith County Retired Teachers Association. We will start off by a pledge by Dr. Wayne Berryman.
We can stand and we'll do the American flag first and then the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the
Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Wayne. We would like to welcome everyone, and we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to our monthly retired teachers meeting. At this time, I'm going to have Jen Carter to come up and just give us a brief overview of something that's going to occur right after our meeting.
Today we're going to honor one of our own, and we've only got to do this one other time since I was a member here. Benny Lee turned 100 last month. Benny Lee was born in Bullard on September the 11th, 1918. She was the second of 12 children, and she is the only surviving member of her family. On September the 11th, you probably know, 2018, Tyler declared it to be Benny Day in Tyler. She taught school for 37 years in White House, 7th and 8th grade English. Unfortunately, I didn't have any children become old enough to be in her classes before she retired. After she retired, she decided she didn't really like sitting home and looking out the window and watching the cars because she liked to be active. And so at the age of 70, she decided to start volunteering at East Texas Medical Center, which is now UT Health. And she worked on Wednesdays at the front desk for 31 years. Her advice was to stay involved, love people, trust God, and give service. Her long life, she also walks 3 miles every day. She said, life is not about me, but what I can do to help someone else. And so we have Peyton Punch to honor her today.
Well, we are very fortunate today to have Kim Beckham here. She's a pastor over at the Central Baptist Church. That's just one of his many talents. He has many that we want to look at. He's been over there for about 31 years, and that says a lot. When you have a pastor that's there for 31 years, I believe that's very, very unique. He is a speaker. He is a leader. He has a passion for leadership. He is a coach in leadership, and he has certification in helping others to assume leadership roles and the skills that are needed. He is a counselor. He has a master's degree in counseling from the Louisiana Baptist Seminary. So we have several counselors in here. There's 2 counselors who have some of the skills that we need with our young people. So this is the main reason I wanted to have Kim Beckham come and to talk to us today. When I first met him, when he was, and still is, a part of the Behavioral Health Leadership, which is a group of leaders in the community in Smith County who are seeking a way to help with the mental health problems that we have in the community. We have, right now the research says that 1 in 5 of people in our population have some kind of mental illness. Now, it could be bipolar, there are many things it could be. There are several things that are classified as mental illness. We have too many people taking their own lives. In the high school age limits, that is the second highest cause of death. Now think about it. That is epidemic. If we have 1 in 5, just think about your classes. How many of those students, class of 30, did you have to stop and give extra time? How many of those had extra problems or needed the extra time? Those are still there. And these are people in our community that we will be dealing with. I felt like it was so appropriate that this group of retired teachers hear what he had to say. Because you are already equipped. In your communities, you know how to talk to people. You know how to listen to people. You know how to show that you care. And this group right here can leave here today and make a difference in this community. So many of you are still volunteering in this community, volunteering somewhere. And we're out there among those people. Kim Beckham is a family member. He's married to a lady named Barbara. They've been married for 40 years. He has children, and he has 4 great grandchildren that are just far above. We're so fortunate to have him here. And let me tell you one other thing about him. He is a writer, and he has a book coming out this year, so maybe we'll hear more about that. So, thank you for being here, and will you join me in welcoming?
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. I actually have 2 books already published. One called Letters to the Heart, How to Say the Most Important Thing to the Most Important People in Your Life. You can get it on Amazon, but it's about using cards, notes, and letters to make an impact and change. And then the second book was published a couple of years ago called Hidden Dangers, about the hidden dangers to personal relationships. We know the major dangers like infidelity and addiction, things like that, but we often don't think about the hidden dangers like comparing our children or our mates to someone else, or assuming the problem is permanent. There's about 15 chapters like that. It's done very well. The third book's at the Agent. It's called Game Changers, People, Places, and Ideas That Change Your Life. But that hasn't been published yet, so y'all can pray about that or write threatening letters to the publishers. I need to get that done, get it out there. But I appreciate you. Appreciate Miss Margaret Sheffield. She's an amazing lady. I had a chance to meet her at the Glenwood Church of Christ when we were speaking, and somewhere else too. And just really appreciate her passion for the issue we're going to talk about today. And I want to say I appreciate you as teachers, retired teachers. I was going to say I'm the student, I'm the reason you have gray hair, but that's not really true. I was not that kind of kid, but my brothers were. So I apologize for my brothers. I was the kind of kid that did pretty good at school. I was aggravated because I always wanted to know why, and why. So sometimes it was just enough why. So that we for a teacher. All right, I want to talk to you for the next few minutes about mental health. And I wanted to talk about the coming storm in mental health. You as teachers and retired teachers and people in the community are probably maybe a little bit more aware of this than others. I was talking to Margaret. Not only did you probably see cases among children when you were teaching where you saw situations that needed care that weren't happening, but they're also among teachers themselves. My brother had a 3rd grade teacher that she was probably bipolar, but she slipped off the edge while she was teaching the class. They had to remove her during the middle of the year. And we had a 1st grade teacher here in the Tyler area that taught my daughter, and they had to remove her too. And it's just one of those things that slips up on people and gets a hold of people, and sometimes it's much. And of course the pressures of teaching and school, you can imagine that. But instead of just giving you some dry statistics about the problems that we're facing and the number of people that are facing mental illness, I just wanted to tell you about something that's close to my heart. Andrew Stocklin. Andrew Stocklin was 30 years old, pastor of the church, very successful. Indian Hills was the name of the church, not a large church. But just a few weeks ago in Chino, California, he committed suicide. Left behind several small children. He had been going through some trials. His father had died of a painful disease, fought cancer for a while, and lost that battle at the age of 55. It also had, for some strange reason, they had a stalker take a crazy person in their church that became a stalker, and they had to move, had to relocate. His mother had to relocate because of this problem. But that and other pressures led him to take his own life. He was sharing with his congregation that he was struggling. He said the church was thriving, growing, and moving, but he was crumbling, exhausted, weak, and tired. And one day he just couldn't do anymore and committed suicide. If that were an anomaly, we wouldn't be having this meeting. But the fact of the matter is, in another church tragedy, Pastor Isaac Hunter, the son of a spiritual advisor to President Obama, took his own life. Pastor Joel Hunter's influence in the White House, his father was very powerful, but Pastor Isaac Hunter was going through marriage troubles, and he took his own life. Just a few days later, the pastor who was grieving the death of his wife shot himself in front of his mother and son. That was Pastor Ed Montgomery, his late wife. There at the Full Gospel Assemblies International Church in Hazel Crest, Illinois. In November, a Georgia pastor killed himself between Sunday services. He had been going through trials. Now, and even closer to home, the former president of the Baptist General Convention of Texas and the former pastor of First Baptist Church of Tyler, Bill Linebarger, took his own life in Sugarland, Texas. And some of you may, like me, have known and loved Bill Linebarger. So my question is, if people like myself who are surrounded by caring people, surrounded by spiritual support, and have most of them a certain amount of training, cannot overcome the challenges of mental illness, the challenges of mental stresses, then what are the rest of us going to do? But it just highlights the fact that we're living in a troubled world, and mental illness is a major challenge. In fact, I think it's the coming storm for what we're facing. As our medical community gets more and more efficient treating issues of our physical health, and we are having some amazing successes. I'm glad this breast awareness, breast cancer, I believe that's what this is, isn't it, breast cancer awareness? I thank you for that. My wife is currently a breast cancer patient, and so we are dealing with this issue right now, but we're so very grateful that we're dealing with this issue now, because now that is one of the most treatable forms of cancer, as opposed to what it was just 25 years ago. So medical skills are raising the ability to fight many of our physical challenges, but at the same time, some of the stresses of our society, some of the difficulties that we're facing are raising the issues of mental illness. And we are literally at a place of great trauma and concern. We should remember, even when you go to church, and I'm sure many of you are godly people and church people and people of faith, just remember when you go to church Sunday, even the minister might be going through struggles that you had no ideas about. So walk gently. And everyone you meet is fighting the battle. Everyone's having a hard time. They may be fighting it about something you know nothing about. Be kind. Always be kind. And beyond kindness, care. Ask, reach out, get involved. Remind somebody that their life is worth living. I can't tell you, it's not been a huge amount of times. I've been privileged to pastor for 42 years and speak for the Lord's Work for 42 years. And I can probably at least 10 times I have received notification that something I said in the course of that sermon made a difference when someone was considering suicide. They were ready to end it all. And that one statement. And you never know who that is. You never know who you're going to meet and where the trials are coming. Why are we facing this crisis in mental health? Why is it that not only pastors, but all kinds of highly trained workers and skilled workers and people in our society are taking their life at a frightening rate? I believe there's some reasons for the rise in mental health. Now, I'm not a doctor. I do have a degree in counseling, but I'm not a practicing mental health professional. But I'll just give you some ideas that I have. One is the lack of financial resources to assist the mentally ill. If any of you have had to do any health care lately, you know it's expensive. And if you don't have insurance and and even if you do have insurance, it's expensive. And even if you have Social Security and Medicare, it's expensive. And it's extremely expensive in the areas of mental illness. And sometimes you can't even get mental illness covered. 2015, there was a report on mental health done by the state. There have been more dates, but I found this one. It said, unfortunately, many people in need of mental health services cannot afford them. We already know that. The need for the public sector behavioral health services is large. The Texas Department of State Health Services estimates that only 30% of adults with severe persistent mental illness and children with severe emotional disorders are enrolled in treatment programs. So only a third of the people who need the help are getting it. The rate is much worse for substance abuse treatment. Some of that is unfortunately, on the people who need it because they're just not interested in doing it at the time because of what's happening in their life. But only 5% of people, according to this report by the state in 2015, with substance abuse problems are getting help they need. And that's with all the great programs we have, because we have a lot of stuff out there, but still things are not being done. And I can't break down those numbers for you, but I can tell you as a pastor who has people come to my office seeking help, that we do not have the financial resources to help people with mental health issues. The reason I got involved with the Behavioral Health Leadership Team, which is a great committee, the reason I got involved is because I have many times had someone come to my office and say, Pastor, I've got this problem, that problem, and it was not a problem that just an hour of counseling or a couple of hours of counseling was going to take care of. And it was not something that you could say, go home and read your Bible and pray about this. This was a real mental illness. This was a problem. And they needed somewhere to go, and there was nowhere to take them. There was nowhere to take them. We have very few beds in the state of Texas. That's something that's trying to be addressed. We basically have 3 state hospitals that are beds available for us. We have Terrell, Rusk, and El Paso. And that's where the beds are that are state mandated. Now, some do have contracts with local hospitals, and that is really helping move some things along. But even with those things, we don't have enough beds. And so what you have is you have somebody who is really in trouble, really needing a place to go, needing around-the-clock care. And you say, well, you need to go over here and you need to check yourself in. And they go check themselves in and they go, do you have insurance? No, I don't have insurance. You do this, no, you don't, then you can't afford it. Or you're going to have to pay out of pocket, and it's hundreds of dollars per hour, and there's no way they can do this. So where does that leave me as a pastor? We cannot afford as a church to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to help people with mental health issues. But we've got to do something. We've got to do something. We've got to find ways to help these people, because many lives could be saved and many heartache could be avoided. Much heartache could be avoided if we could find a way to do it. I can tell you that finances are part of the reason why we have a coming crisis in mental health. Second reason is lack of emotional will to face the problem. The lack of the emotional will to face the problem. You know, we're really good people at pretending there's not a problem, right? Anybody else here have a problem pretending there's not a problem? One of the great questions someone asked me, if you want to move forward in your career and life, is ask yourself, what are you pretending not to know? What are you pretending not to know? What are you pretending, I'm not going to even mention because it's birthday, but what are you pretending not to know about your diet? I have a vision, sorry about that. What are you pretending not to know about your finances? What are you pretending not to know about your family? A lot of times we see stuff coming, we just don't want to deal with it. We don't want to face the fact sometimes that someone we love, we care about, we know is in trouble. And we just try to say, well, that's just a bad week. No, maybe it's not a bad week. Maybe it's a bad month. Maybe it's a bad year. And maybe they really got a problem. And we need to have the emotional will to face the problem. Why does our society not have the emotional will to face the problem of mental illness? Because one, it's not primal. You know, it's easier to deal with primal issues like feeding the hungry. That's a primal issue. Anybody can understand that. Somebody's hungry, give them some food. We can see somebody hungry, give them some food, we feel better about it. Mental health's not like that. Somebody's got a real problem with mental health, we're going to put so many millions of dollars into that, and then we put years of work and we don't know if we made any progress. It's not a primal issue. It's also not rescue. It's not simple. We don't get a simple success matrix. And it's not, it doesn't give us that, sometimes that feel-good feeling. I don't pick on any pet parents here, but any of you that have pets, you know, I mean, you know, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's easier, but it touches our hearts. I don't have cats. It touches your heart when you see a dog or a cat that's being mistreated. Can we rescue that animal? Can we give them a safe environment? That's a feel-good feeling. It's a rescue. We get it done. We get them out of that problem. You don't have that with mental illness. Sometimes the best we can do with mental illness is provide ongoing care. But it's necessary care. So since it's not a rescue, sometimes people don't see it as something they want to deal with. It's also not a single issue problem. It's a multi-level complex issue. You know, and I'm not a proponent of any of these, but just, you know what I mean by single issues, like abortion or gun control or immigration. Single issues. In other words, this is one subject. We're going to talk about one issue. You can't do that when you talk about mental illness. Are you talking about mental illness caused by substance abuse? Are you talking about mental illness that's post-traumatic stress result, like so many of our military are dealing with now? See, we live in a crazy world where our military has done such a great job of protecting our soldiers that they created better body armor, better vehicles for them to be in combat with, and better surgical teams to take care of them when they're injured in combat. But what they haven't been able to do is the fact that sometimes when they are in an explosion, their body armor may protect them, their vehicle may protect them, but their head is getting slammed around inside their skull from the force of that impact, creating mental illness, sometimes creating mental illness. So you got substance abuse, you got post-traumatic stress, you got the natural chemical failures of life that can create, more complex than I understand, schizophrenia, manic depression, which is now called bipolar, or many other mental illnesses. We don't know. Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's environmental, sometimes it's a combination of both. I'm just saying it's a multifaceted problem with a lot of tentacles out there, and you work on this one and you work on that, but you can't just say, hey, let's just deal with this and solve the problem. It's too complex. So, what do? Well, let's don't deal with it. It's just too complicated. We can't deal with it. We just throw up our hands and walk away. And that's one reason why we have a crisis in mental health. It's also the lack of social and spiritual resources that we need to sustain our society. That's the third one. The lack of social and spiritual resources to sustain our society. This wonderful lady, 100 years old, God bless you, what an inspiration. But I just think of what she's seen in her lifetime, 100 years.
Yes.
What we've come from. You know, I'm just 64 years old, and I'm still trying to figure this thing out. And the impact of this. She came along before there was, I would guess, before there was a phone in every home. Much less, there were automobiles, but how many people had automobiles? Before there was manned air flight, certainly, of course, space flight, and on and on and on. So the challenge. But along with all the amazing technological advances, and I'm excited about those things, we have seen a deterioration of the core elements that build a healthy emotional society. One of them is the breakdown of the family unit. Tremendous pressures in our society has led to a tremendous pressure on families. And as a result of that, we live in a sea of divorce and single-parent families, and people doing the very best they can in a difficult situation. I'm not here to pick on anybody, but I'm saying it makes it more difficult. And it makes it more difficult for people to find the emotional strength that they need. When you don't have, some of you, the 12, I love that, 12 children in the family. My mother was one of 12. And I asked her, I said, well, what was the main thing about being one of 12? She's just trying to find enough to eat. He was joking. I said, well, how do you raise 12 kids? How did your mother raise 12 kids? She said she did. She raised the first 3 and they raised the rest. They did not have a lot of money. They were from Pittsburgh, Texas. They drew water out of a well. They had outdoor toilets. My grandfather was a sharecropping farmer, and he plowed the mules. They didn't have much, but you know what they did have? Love. And a strong sense of connection as a family. They ate together every night around the same table. They didn't have much to wear food, but they all had the same. They loved each other. My parents, even there's only 4 that family left. They still can just absolutely love being together and get together whenever they can. We don't have that as much in our society. We have more material possessions, but we have less family strength. That's creating mental health issues. There's not that resource to go to find the strength when you're facing the onslaught of pressure. I don't know if this is the right place to say it, but I'll say it admittedly with a bias. The move to secular versus spiritual thinking in our culture. And I'm not here to pick on you or preach to you, but I'm going to tell you there's a great resource in the power of faith. And there's a great bit of comfort in knowing where to connect when you're in times of trouble. If you take that away from people and tell them there's nothing and there's nothing out there, it's just you, hope you make it, there's nothing but being born and dying and just trouble in between, that is a pretty tough way to get through life. When you lose that resource, people are it's going to show up. And then here's the one, this is my bailiwick, so I'll be preaching to me. This is my place of trouble and challenge. The unfortunate stigma assessed to the mentally ill in our institutions of faith. Some of you are people of faith, and I'll just tell you one of the best things that has happened to us in the last 30 years is we've stopped stigmatizing people with mental health issues in our churches. We quit telling people that you just get right with God and pray over it, you'll be fine. That's ridiculous. If somebody has a heart issue in your problem and their heart rhythm is off, you don't tell them, why don't you just pray about that, read your Bible, you'll be fine. You send them to the doctor and he does something for them. He gives them some medication and there's no stigma, right? Then why is there stigma when this organ is causing you problems? Makes absolutely no sense. And so thankfully, houses of faith, people of faith are beginning to understand that we are fearfully and wonderfully made and we're very complex and we are people who need help on all levels. And if you're struggling mentally, then you need to get the same sort of support and strength that you would get than if your liver was failing you without any kind of stigma put on you in the houses of faith. So that's what we're working on, and that's my end of it. And I think we're making great progress. So, having said something about the problems we're facing, what's going on that we are doing to make things better? A few years ago, the Behavioral Health Leadership Team was formed in Tyler, Texas. I was not part of the original part of it. I came along by invitation later, but it was an attempt to try to understand all the different avenues of help that were available in Tyler and Smith County, and how did we have any gaps in service, and did we have any overlaps in service, and were there any places we could do the job better? For instance, we were talking about this issue of not having enough beds. We now know that one of the biggest wastes when it comes to taxpayer dollars to dealing with the issue of mental health is because about the only resource sometimes we have to deal with mental health is law enforcement. Somebody shows up on your lawn and they're having a mental crisis and they've slipped out of reality and they refuse to wear clothes and they're on your front lawn screaming and hollering. What do? Well, you call the police. And the police come, and because this person is not a threat to anybody, this person is not violent, they just simply have lost touch with reality of the moment, they don't have where to take them because the beds are all full. So where do they take them? They take them to jail. You know how much it costs to keep somebody in jail? About 5 times what it costs to keep them in a mental health hospital. So we are beginning to understand these issues. If we can figure out how to get people in the proper place so that we can maximize the use of tax dollars to take strain off law enforcement, but also provide the actual real care that's needed for people who are suffering mental health, we can be more effective for the patient and more effective in the use of dollars. So that's just one of many, many different facets of the behavioral health leadership team is working on. So what have they done so far? Well, they're a couple, 3 years old. It's the largest committee I've ever been on. I don't know how many have ever been on a committee? I've been teaching you that. Committees are usually worthless. But they say that a camel is a horse put together by a committee. Maybe. But committees can be effective. But this is the largest committee I've ever seen. Margaret's been to, I guess there's probably 50 people in this committee. 80 people. And but the reason it's so large is because it's trying to get all the stakeholders together. It's the law enforcement, it's all the hospitals, it's mental health professionals, it's psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors, it's the nonprofits that deal with mental health, it's faith-based caregivers, etc. They're all in the room and they're trying to get together. The first thing they did, they got a grant from the Meadows Foundation. It cost them $75,000 to do this extensive study of mental health care in Smith County, and it was months of testing, work, and whatever, and they came back with 26 proposals for what we could do, where our gaps were in our service, what we could do, and how, by the way, they raised that money cash to pay for that grant, so no public money was spent on that. And so that grant was done, and now we know exactly what we're trying to work on, we're trying to move forward. One of the things I had hoped to see was the creation of a assistance unit like Hospice of East Texas, where you can go to Hospice of East Texas and it doesn't cost you anything. And so if you need to be there for that kind of care, I wanted something like that for mental health that we would be providing here. But unfortunately, we've had to move that to the back burner because this research showed us that the expense of that was just outrageous. We thought we could raise the cash to build it, maybe $1.2 billion to build it, but the problem was because it has to be staffed by mental health professionals and all the bureaucracy involved in that, it would cost $1 billion a year to run it. So, or more, I don't know the figures are exact. But anyway, it was just not cost efficient at this time. So, I hope we get there someday, but that's not what they're working on at the moment. They are doing some things. So progress has been made. For instance, there have started the mental health court in 2017. You may have seen that in the newspaper. Judge Nathaniel Moran is in charge of that. A grant was received of $73,000 to make possible a court that specifically focused on people that were dealing with mental health issues at the time. And that has been very helpful. That took some of the strain off of the other court system, gave him a little more time and the other judges that sit in that court to focus on that particular problem. So that has been a good success. And we have continued to go into 2019 with that, and maybe into fiscal 60% of the cost of fiscal 2020. Most recently, we received a $900,000 grant that's designated for the AOT treatment program at the Andrews Center. The Andrews Center is the state center that focuses pretty much on mental health here in Tyler. The AOT assistant program is built to significantly improve adherence and treatment outcomes for historically non-adherent patients with serious mental illness. Basically, its goals are increased use of outpatient treatment for revolving door patients, decreasing homelessness, arrest, and incarceration. Though that's $900,000 in a grant that we're going to be putting to work there to help in that issue. That's going to be a very helpful thing. Plus, along with that, you have monthly, bi-monthly meetings in this committee trying to figure out where to go next. I hope if you haven't, how many of you know Doug Swain? Anybody here know Doug? If you know Doug, if you don't know, you need to send him a note, and a kind note, something, Doug and Bo McSwain. Doug and Mo McSwain, one of my heroes, they're my heroes. They lost a son to schizophrenia a few years ago. He was fine when he left high school, but somewhere in college, he slipped into schizophrenia and he took his own life. And it broke their hearts, and like a lot of people, they took that pain and they turned it into action and started working on a mental health issue, and they are the driving force behind this. And so if you ever run across Doug or Mo McSwain, be sure and hug your neck and tell them thank you for the huge sacrifices they're making to help the mental health. What can you do? Teachers, retired teachers, workers, I got 4 suggestions for you. Number 1, any chance you get, you need to discuss and address mental illness in every organization you're a part of. You do, as Margaret pointed out, you do have access. You have the respect of people that know you. You're a respected teacher. Let's take mental health out of the closet. Y'all remember the story of To Kill a Mockingbird? You remember Boo? You remember the boy next door? That was mental health in the South in those days. You had somebody that had mental health issues, you hid him in a closet. And we don't do that anymore. We need to take mental health out of the closet. And you can help do that. So when you have a chance to talk about it, discuss it, bring it up. So what are we doing about mental health? We also need political support. That's the second thing. I know you vote, and when you vote, make sure the candidates you're voting for have a sensitivity to and an interest in mental health issues, because they are going, I'm trusting, they're going to be the rising tide and difficulty in our communities in the days ahead. How are we going to deal with this issue? See, part of our problem came because they got tired of spending all the money on mental health, so they cut back funding so much and everybody wound up on the street. We can't do that anymore. We have to deal with mental health issues. So be sure to know your candidates, know something about them, and write them, speak to them, call them, and say, please focus on mental health issues. We need to help these people. Third, you need to volunteer with organizations committed to exploring strategies to address mental health. There's a lot of places that it's hard to get volunteers for, and this is one of them. A lot of people are not too interested in mental health issues. So if you want to volunteer, I'm sure there'll be a spot for you. Look for those places that are working on it. Volunteer your time, your energy, and your passion. You'll make a difference. And then third or fourth, you need to reach out and support the families of those dealing with the trauma of mental health. Somebody has a loved one that dies unexpectedly of Parkinson's. We just had a family, 52 years old, died of Parkinson's disease. Whole church turns out, potluck dinners, cards, notes, plants come, people go out by to visit. Another family in the church has a son commit suicide. Nobody says anything. Nobody goes by. Nobody brings a casserole. Everybody's just saying, well, they must be embarrassed. What kind of thing is that? Don't do that. Reach out to people. I don't know, it doesn't matter why somebody was taken. It just matters that somebody they love was taken. Reach out to them, encourage them, love on them, let them know. Care. Ask, reach out, get involved. Remind someone every day that you see someone having a hard time, remind them their life is worth living. He needs you here. You're making a difference. And you'll make a difference. All right? Congratulations.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And let me announce a thing too. There is a walk for suicide prevention Saturday week. That's on the 20th at 9 o'clock in the morning. Forget it. Get ready to come over to Redmond Park and walk
for this year?
Right here.
Okay, would you like to stand up and just tell us your name and where you retired from? Oh, if you don't want to stand up, you can sit and tell us. Okay,
I'm Vivian Schuler,
okay.
and I work at Stewart.
Okay, great. We're so glad you
And I had, when she was not a new member, but I had called her, but she had to leave, Antoinette Edwards, so but she had to leave, but this was her first time
coming to the meeting. Very good. Very good. Any other new members? Thank you. At this time, I'm going to talk about the nominating committee. By our bylaws state that we need to elect a nominating committee in October. It's not on your agenda, but we're going to take care of this today because we need to address it in our October meeting. But our bylaws state that we need to elect a nominating committee in October. And that is what we're going to proceed to do now. The nominating committee will seek volunteers to serve in the different, different officers that we have. The president, first vice president, second vice president, secretary, treasurer, and Jean will continue to tell you the others. The proposed nominating committee consists of the following individuals. Jean Fuller will be the chairperson. Thank you for standing, Jean. Kevin Basham.
He was gonna try to be here, but he wasn't sure he could.
Okay, he was here.
Oh, did I didn't see him? Okay.
Yeah, he was here. He was sitting right over there.
I didn't see him.
Okay, he might have walked out. Lynn Fisher. Okay. Margaret Sheffield, she was sitting right there. Oh, there she is. Miss Martell Williams. Okay, these are the individuals for the proposed nominating committee. Is it anyone, we will open the floor, is it anyone else that would like to serve? Okay, if we don't have anyone else that would like to serve, I would like for someone to make a motion to accept the nominating committee.
I so move. To
Okay,
accept this slate of, this nominating committee for the slate of officers.
and do you mind telling our secretary your name?
I'm not telling you. Wanda.
And it was second? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So at this time, I'm gonna have Jean to come up.
We need to vote.
Oh, yes, thank you.
We need to vote first.
Okay, Kevin just waved, came in. Kevin, will you wave your hand? Kevin is, for the nominating committee. Okay, all in favor of the individuals that I named to be on the nominating committee? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Okay, the ayes accepted. So Miss Jean will come up.
Or the term is Jean down.
Well, Mark and I were talking about this last week or maybe the week before, and I told him I thought it was November that we needed the committee, and then I looked it up in the bylaws and it was October. He said, well, I don't think we can get this ready. I said, well, we don't need to do it in November when Tim Lee's here, so they know we are not following the bylaws 2.5 months late. But we also need plenty of time to get that ready because we have to have a slate of officers for you by January. And so that gives us like 3 months now to do that. So I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit what each person does. It's actually, most of them are in the front of your directory or your yearbook. Of course, the president, is in charge of the meetings and in charge of all the business that takes place. The first vice president is in charge of membership, taking care of membership. That's their only job. I mean, it's a big job, isn't it? The second vice president is in charge of public relations, making sure the newspaper knows about it. I may not always print it, like Patty, but you at least have told them that we're having a meeting. In charge of the book project, but they don't have to do this all by themselves. They have committees or people that have agreed to help them. And then the banquet. And So those are the three things that the second vice president's in charge of. The recording secretary, of course, comes and takes the minutes. And then he or she gets them printed up and sends them to the president, where he or she can get them printed for us to have. The treasurer, of course, is in charge of all our money. Jan has done that for a long time, so she knows the job there. But in charge of taking our money, when I was a membership person, she took the money and she would get me, send me lists of people that had signed up, so I would know who were our current members. And then the parliamentarian, actually our past president will be Mark, will step into that parliamentarian job. And so that one actually is already taken care of. So we have 5 groups or 5 offices. We have a historian and a corresponding secretary, but those are actually appointed. The president will appoint those people. We don't have to vote on them. But what I would like to ask you is that if you know people that you think would be good at doing these jobs, if you will tell us today before you leave, if you'll call or email one of the 5 of us so that we can have some people to start with. I've decided we're going to be anonymous. If you give that name, we're not going to tell them when they say, who gave my name? We are going to say, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that. So that you can be anonymous and won't lose a friend because you told them. I remember when I was asked to do this, I had been in the organization for a year. And I was called and asked to do this. I told them I would do them at once. First, I was offered the membership and the second vice president, so I said, what do they have to do? And since membership just had membership, then I took it. But anyway, so I was there for a few years too. But we really need new blood to help out. So when you are called, please consider the office and hopefully take it, because we're going to be working on that. One more thing, as a legislative person, I want to mention this. Margaret made this up and put it out for us to have. Tonight, there is a forum. I talked about it last month. It's for if you live in Smith County. I mean, you can go even if you don't. But the people that are involved, I mean, the ones that have been invited, or Representative Goldberg and his, whoever's running against him, Representative Hefner and who's running against him, and Representative Schaefer. And then there's some other Smith County jobs. But if you go, here are some questions you might want to make sure that you ask. We need to know. Also, the mental health issue, I think that's a great idea that Reverend Beckham had when he was telling us. But we need to make sure that the people that we are electing are involved or supporting what we're talking about. Mark and Marilyn and Lynn and Wayne, and who am I leaving out? Went to the convention. I mean, Gladys went to the her and his wife, Evelyn, went to the district convention, or district conference, last Tuesday. And Trent Clardy was there, and he was talking about what was going on. And Wayne, tell him what
He's running for speaker.
He's running for speaker, but you mentioned, you asked him a question, and then you mentioned a little bit more about it, because it didn't seem,
The question
negative.
the question I asked him was basically, would he support a 13th check, since it's very unlikely, if not totally impossible, to expect the legislature to give any kind of a permanent increase this year. And basically, he said no, that he would not, because he said that he thought that we ought not to take any money out of the fund, that we ought to try to keep as much money in that fund so we can give a permanent raise. And I didn't tell him this.
he told it later after we left.
Yeah, Travis is a friend of mine, and I've known him a long time, and his in-laws I've known nearly all my life, and they're really close friends. But I told somebody, I said, that answer, that reminds me of the story about the farmer that went to see his neighbor and said, I want to borrow your rope. And the neighbor said, well, I'm sorry, I can't loan you that rope today, I've got to go to town. And the first guy said, well, what you going to town got to do with me borrowing your rope? And he said, nothing, but if I don't want you to borrow my rope, one excuse is good enough. I think that's what we hear from.
Party's a representative for that.
Yeah.
Well, he's my representative, because I live in Cherokee County.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd support Travis on
But
that.
I think last time I was here, well, you know, we just need to ask for a 13th check, because that's better than nothing. But I really think we need to ask for a 13th check, and we need to ask for a raise. And even though they're helping with healthcare, I think people will say, well, y'all wanting all this stuff. Well, what's wrong with wanting all that stuff? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
So I think that, I mean, what's wrong if we ask for both and we just get one that's better than nothing? But if we only ask for one and don't get anything.
Yeah.
So at least I think we need to check with these, you know, talk with these people tonight, or you check if you don't live in Smith County with what county you live in, see if they're gonna have some kind of forum where you can ask questions and see if they support our defined benefit, or they interested in giving us, you know, a raise, or are they gonna help us with health care?
Well, you know-
Permanent help for health care, not every biennium something new.
We have a TRS representative there, and he had talked, but Ray Spivey was there, and I visited with, he got there a little late, and he left early, but I visited with Ray while we had a break, and, you know, the requirement for us to have a permanent raise, permanent increase in our annuity is that the fund has to be actuarially sound, which means that we have to pay all, the TRS has to be able to pay all their debts in 31 years. Well, we got close to that time or two ago, but we didn't quite get there, so no increase in anything, no 13th check, no permanent increase. Well, it got to the point where it got moved up to almost 50 years, and Ray made the statement that we are 80 years out now. Well, I'm telling you, there is no way this legislature will put enough money into our retirement fund for us to have a permanent increase. I don't know when. And a lot of that problem, a whole lot of that was created when the board of TRS moved our target fund from 8% down to 7.25%, and that means that it takes longer for us to get a permanent increase. And that being the case, the legislature ought to be looking to try to help us some way. They hurt us bad in our insurance this last year. No permanent increase, you know, but one time for about 2/3 of the people in the last 15 years, and you know, it's just a situation that the legislature ought to address, and they're not willing to do it.
And one thing too, we're talking about the rainy day fund, and I've forgotten, if they gave all of us a 13th check, they would make up their money in what, 2 weeks? Is it was?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't come out of the rainy day fund. They give a 13th check, they give any kind of, it comes out of that teacher retirement. But they make so much money a day on, they make nearly $5 million an hour in interest, because our fund is worth 140 some odd billion dollars. And when you're making close to, it made 13-point-something% last year. When you make that much money on $140 billion, you're making millions of dollars an hour on the fund, and let's pay everybody a full 13th check, not the one that's limited to, you know, we had a 13th check in 2007, and it was limited to $2,400, which was, you know, the average, I think payment out is about $2,100 now. So a lot of people got a full 13th check, but more than half the people didn't get a full 13th check. But they could give a full one and make it up in a week's time almost. But the legislature, like I say, one excuse is good as nothing.
We got people we need to get people in there to help us on that. It is at, right back at the library.
That was like.
Actually, you know what this is? The 8th, we kept discussing that the other day. Anyway, we missed it, oops. I kept looking, did I put the wrong date on here? So I said, no, the 9th is right. So I did when I put it in the bell ringer also. But early voting, so we missed that early voting starts October 22nd, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, and goes through, I think, the Friday before the election. So please make sure you get out and vote and research candidates. Use some of those things that Tim Lee sent in the inside line, or look up some things, and make sure that you are choosing someone who goes with what you are wanting.
Thank you, Jean. At this time, did all of y'all receive the minutes? If we'll take a few moments for you to review the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, the minutes will stand approved as read. Ms. Jan, would you like to give a treasury report?
I think mine's pretty easy to understand, unless anybody has a question.
Okay. Well, before Jan do the birthdays, some quick announcement. TRTA convention will it'll be March the 31st, which is on a Sunday, until April the 2nd. That is the actual dates of the convention in Austin. If you would like to go, we have a you can sign up, it's right in front of Jan, it's a sign-in sheet where you can sign and put your name. But if you go ahead and put your name, if you're really thinking about going, go ahead and put your name down so Mark can make arrangements for the rooms.
Marilyn, may I interrupt?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Remember last time we were issued the challenge that we want to have a caravan of cars going down on Valley Day? So please think about that and sign up first and then think about it. So you'll go. And we need at least 20 people signed up over here, and we want a whole, we hope we can get a bus, we charter a bus, for us to go down and express our concerns, the ones we've talked about today, and that we can be there and eyeball these people that make a difference. So sign up today, whether you're going or not.
And we have a you can sign in, we have a sheet right up there next to the convention. Because if we know that you're going, we can see if we can make arrangements as far as transportation. So please sign up. And the rally day is just one day, and that is April the 3rd, and it's at the Capitol. Jean have already stated that early voting begins October the 2nd. And our next meeting will be a little different. Normally our meetings are the second Tuesday of the month. Next month, the meeting will be November the 27th. I know that, that's later on in the month. But it's due to the fact, that was the only time we could get Tim Lee. So that is why it's later on in the month. But be ready the second Tuesday in December. We will have our December meeting. And we will have a Christmas program, a music program. And our Facebook page is at the end of your minutes, at the end of your agenda. You can always check our Facebook page. So any other thing before Ms. Jan comes up? And so,
I just want to be sure that we recognize that Vandria Kendall is here, Representative Anba. Most of y'all know her. She represents all of your Texas Retired Teachers Association endorsed benefits. She's a great resource for us, and I hope that y'all will utilize her, okay?
Mayor, let me say one thing about Tim Lee. Tim, we would be in a whole lot worse shape than we are if we didn't have Tim Lee. And I am a big supporter of Tim Lee. I think he does a great job for us. And I sure hope we have a really big crowd that comes out to hear him. We don't want to be embarrassed by having a little, you. We need to have a big crowd. And I have some friends, unfortunately, well, they're friends, but unfortunately, they don't belong to our organization. And, so I'm gonna invite them to go to lunch with me that day, I'll see if they won't come. But, you know, if you don't belong, they're stealing from me in a way, because I'm supporting, by my membership, all of those other people that are not coming. And I want them to come here, Tim Lee. We have the largest retired teacher organization in the United States. We have more than 80,000 members, but we've got the possibility of having twice that many, more than twice that many. And you know, people that are getting represented ought to come here. The man who is the major mover that represents us, I think they ought to be interested in coming to hear him. So I'm going to invite those half a dozen or more friends to go to lunch with me, and I'm not going to pay for it, but I am going to ask him to go to lunch and tell him I want him to come here to Tim Lee when we get through. So maybe I can twist it up on him. And I think we all ought to make an effort to do that.
Yes, and I challenge everyone to invite a friend.
In conjunction with what Wayne was saying, that was one of the considerations the state board had reference to earlier, because if we don't have an acceptable group present, they want to curtail the expenditure of letting the officers go out and visit with those groups.
And I'll say, when I tried to get Tim Lee, the year I was president,
Yes.
she wanted to make sure he didn't have more than 20 or 30 people.
There you
I
go,
said,
they're gonna
"Yes,
ask you that.
we will
You
have
need to be here."
50 to 75. So see, they're not gonna come. In fact, ours is the largest one in Smith County that they'll even come to. So Mark made sure he announced it at the conference the other day, and they come to hear him, you know, at our group, because their groups are too small.
And Tim loves Tyler, so we really need to stand up and be present when they
We
can.
need to have people.
Someone's new and doesn't know, Herb Norris was the state president a few years ago, which is a 2-year commitment if you ever decide you want to do that. And he is just, 2 years out of it now, of driving all over the state for 10 years. So we're very fortunate that he's a member of our group.
That's right.
I think that we can look through these yearbooks and we can see people we know who have retired. And I think if we get a postcard or whatever, some kind of communication, and just put that Tim Lee is coming, it's very important for us to show our support for him. I think it might make a difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could probably write 6 postcards right now without thinking. And I imagine the rest of you are the same way. So I'm just going to challenge everybody to do that.
And, you know what, because I love a challenge. We are going to have a sign-in sheet for the individuals that bring the most guests. And we will have a token of our appreciation. And I think that any kind of way you can get them.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make a commitment to get a $100 gift card to Dakota's for them.
Here's your yearbook. And busy calling. Or postcard here.
See, all you have to do is make a challenge.
Well, that's true too.
My
Some of
daughter
these.
and her friend, retired from Conwell this year. And she read my book and saw Tim's name there. He was gonna be talking about something that she's been worried about already. So they will be here that day.
You sandbagging
Oh,
now.
and we have,
She's sandbagging.
and we have membership forms. We have some today, if you would like to take some
Okay, I'll
too.
take them and they'll have.
That way they'll already have, they can fill them out. If
They
not,
came to our banquet in the spring.
exactly.
Okay.
Oh, that would be great. So it,
Cynthia had the, whatever.
Rotator cuff.
Yes, and, they gave her this, pain medicine, and she's kind of been up there. So she
Yeah, and you make sure you drive this morning. Don't let her drive, but you drive and bring her on. Okay, anyone else?
She could definitely bring Miss Georgia Brown. I know you live close to her.
She's not feeling well.
I know all about her. I call her up, I said, Georgia, Georgia. She said, heading back.
So, Miss Janet, will you come up and celebrate?
Ready to do the October birthdays?
Okay, anyone else born in October other than me?
We need to back up to Vinnie, because she had something else going last month. Next time we here. Yes, ma'am, we do.
I got started here.
That's right.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
There you go.
Keep your mind.
Do we have anything else?
Yes, we had 41 presents. Thank you.
Lots of goodies back here.
Yes,
Please vote.
yes.
Please vote.
So if nothing else, the meeting